r/ProRevenge my ex crashed my wedding so I exposed his lies to everyone. The church door slammed open just as Pastor Williams asked if anyone had objections to our union. My blood turned to ice water. I knew that silhouette without turning around, the cocky stance, the deliberately dramatic entrance. Marcus. Actually, I do have something to say, his voice boomed across the chapel, that same smooth tone that once made my heart flutter but now made my stomach churn. My new husband David's hand tightened around mine as 200 guests turned in their seats like dominoes falling. I could hear my mother's sharp intake of breath from the front row, my father's muttered curse word that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Marcus strutted down the aisle in jeans and a wrinkled button down, his hair disheveled like he'd just rolled out of bed. The audacity was breathtaking, even for him. Sarah, he called out, arms spread wide like some romantic movie hero. You can't marry him. You know we belong together. What we had was real. The chapel erupted in confused murmurs. David stepped protectively in front of me, his jaw clenched. Security, he called out, but Marcus kept talking, his voice rising above the chaos. She never told you about us, did she? Marcus addressed the crowd now, spinning lies with the same silver tongue that had fooled me for 3 years. About how she begged me to take her back. How she said I was the love of her life. Sarah, you're making a mistake. Remember what you said, that no one would ever compare to what we had? My bridesmaids looked mortified. David's family sat in stunned silence. And there was Marcus, painting himself as a heartbroken victim who'd come to rescue me from my own poor judgment. The same manipulation. The same twisted version of reality he'd been spinning for 2 years. After our breakup, Marcus had systematically poisoned our entire friend group against me. He told them I was unstable, that I'd cheated on him, that I'd destroyed our relationship out of nowhere. He played the wounded ex so convincingly that I lost half my social circle overnight. People I'd known for years suddenly treated me like I was toxic. I'd spent months in therapy undoing the damage he'd done to my self-worth. Months rebuilding my ability to trust my own memories, my own sanity. David had been patient, loving, everything Marcus never was, but even now I could see doubt flickering in some guests' eyes as Marcus wove his web of lies. Remember our last night together? Marcus continued, his voice dripping with fake emotion. You said you'd always love me. You said. Stop. The word came out stronger than I felt. My bouquet trembled in my hands as I stepped around David to face my personal nightmare. Marcus smiled that predatory grin I knew so well. He thought he was winning. He thought he could humiliate me into submission one more time, ruin the happiest day of my life just like he tried to ruin everything else. But what Marcus didn't know, what he'd forgotten in his narcissistic confidence, was that I'd learned to document everything after living with his gaslighting. I kept every text, every voicemail, every piece of evidence from our relationship. Including the ones that would destroy his carefully crafted victim narrative forever. My phone was tucked in my maid of honor's purse, loaded with 2 years' worth of ammunition. My hand reached for it as I stared at the man who'd nearly broken me. It was time to break him back. Sarah, don't let your pride ruin this, Marcus continued, his voice taking on that sickeningly sweet tone he used when he thought he was being charming. I know you're scared. I know David seems safe, but we both know safe isn't what your heart wants. The manipulative bastard was actually using my own vulnerabilities against me, things I'd confided in him during our relationship about my fear of being hurt, my tendency to choose stability over passion. He was weaponizing my deepest insecurities in front of everyone I cared about. David's family looked increasingly uncomfortable. His grandmother was clutching her pearls, literally. I could see his younger sister recording everything on her phone. Great, this nightmare was going to live forever on social media. Marcus, you need to leave. Now. David's voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. My gentle, conflict-avoiding husband was 2 seconds away from throwing hands, and while part of me loved him for it, I couldn't let this spiral into chaos. Oh, the replacement wants to talk, Marcus laughed, that cruel edge creeping into his voice. Tell me, David, did she mention that she called me crying just 6 months ago? Begging me to give us another chance? My blood pressure spiked. That was a complete fabrication. 6 months ago I was happily engaged and planning this wedding. But I could see some guests whispering, doubt spreading like poison through the chapel. That's not, I started, but Marcus cut me off. She said the engagement was a mistake. That she was settling. Sound familiar, buddy? Marcus's smile was vicious as he turned back to me. I told you I'd think about taking you back, remember? Well, I've decided. I forgive you, Sarah. For the cheating, for the lies you told about me, for trying to destroy my reputation when I wouldn't enable your behavior anymore. The gasps from my family were audible. My teenage cousin's jaw was on the floor. Even Pastor Williams looked like he wanted to crawl under his podium. This was worse than I'd imagined. Marcus wasn't just trying to stop my wedding, he was systematically destroying my reputation in front of everyone who mattered to me. Every lie he'd spread in private over the past 2 years was now being broadcast to my family, David's family, our friends, our colleagues. My maid of honor Jessica caught my eye and subtly held up her purse. She knew about the evidence I'd kept. She'd been there through the breakup, the therapy, the slow rebuilding of my confidence. She was ready. But my father was already standing up in the front pew, his face red with rage. Get out of here before I throw you out myself, he growled. Mr. Chen, I understand you're protective of Sarah, Marcus said with fake respect, but she's an adult. She can make her own choices. And I think deep down, she knows she's making the wrong one. He was enjoying this. The sick pleasure in his eyes as he watched my family fracture in real time, as he turned my wedding into his personal theater of revenge. That's when I realized his endgame. This wasn't about wanting me back, this was about punishing me for moving on. For finding happiness without him. For refusing to be broken by his abuse. Marcus wanted to ensure that even if I married David, this day would forever be tainted. That every anniversary would be shadowed by this humiliation. That David's family would always wonder if the woman their son married was really the person Marcus was describing. The church fell silent except for the sound of my rapid heartbeat in my ears. 200 pairs of eyes waited to see what I would do. I looked at my phone in Jessica's purse, then back at Marcus's smug face. Game on. I took a deep breath and reached for Jessica's purse, my fingers closing around my phone. But before I could pull it out, Marcus played another card that made my stomach drop to the floor. Oh, and David? Marcus's voice turned sickeningly sympathetic as he addressed my fiancé directly. You should probably know about the abortion. The chapel went dead silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. 2 years ago, Sarah was pregnant with my baby. But instead of talking to me about it, she just got rid of it. Didn't even give me a choice in the matter. His voice cracked with practiced emotion. That's when I realized what kind of person she really was. Someone who makes decisions that affect both partners without any consideration for. Stop. The word ripped from my throat like a scream. My hands were shaking so violently I nearly dropped my phone. You have no right to. To what? To tell the truth? Marcus shrugged, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. David deserves to know what he's signing up for. The lies, the secrets, the way she handles difficult situations. I could hear my mother crying behind me. David's parents looked like they'd been slapped. His conservative Catholic family was processing this information in real time, and I could practically see their opinion of me shifting. The worst part? There was a grain of truth buried in Marcus's lies, which made it so much more devastating. I had been pregnant briefly, and I had terminated the pregnancy. But what Marcus conveniently left out was that I'd caught him cheating at the time, that he'd told me he wasn't ready for kids anyway, and that he'd actually seemed relieved when I made the decision. He was taking the most painful, private moment of my life and weaponizing it against me in front of everyone I loved. That's not, you didn't want. I was stammering, my carefully planned revenge momentarily forgotten as I struggled to defend myself against this character assassination. Sarah, it's okay, David whispered, his hand finding mine. Whatever happened before doesn't matter to me. But I could see the shock in his eyes too. Not judgment, David wasn't like that, but surprise that I'd never shared this part of my past with him. We'd talked about having kids, about our future, and I'd never mentioned this chapter of my history. Marcus saw David's reaction and pounced. See? She keeps secrets from everyone. Even from you, the man she claims to love enough to marry. What else hasn't she told you? What other lies is your marriage going to be built on? The manipulation was masterful and disgusting. He was taking my private trauma and using it to drive a wedge between me and David, while simultaneously painting himself as the wronged party who'd been denied his right to fatherhood. You said you understood, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Because he had, at the time, Marcus had said he supported whatever decision I made. He'd even driven me to the appointment. I said what you needed to hear because I loved you, Marcus replied smoothly. But it destroyed something inside me, Sarah. Knowing that the woman I thought I'd spend my life with could make that choice without really including me in the process. More lies wrapped in just enough truth to sound plausible. My therapist had warned me about this, how abusers rewrite history to cast themselves as victims while simultaneously punishing their targets for moving forward. The congregation was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some of David's relatives looked genuinely disturbed. My own family seemed torn between defending me and trying to process these revelations. I realized Marcus had calculated this perfectly. He wasn't just trying to stop my wedding, he was trying to poison it. To ensure that even if David and I went through with the ceremony, our marriage would be built on this foundation of public humiliation and private doubt. My phone felt heavy in my hands. The evidence I gathered could expose Marcus's lies, but now I'd have to reveal intimate details about the most painful period of my life to defend myself. Marcus was forcing me to choose between my privacy and my reputation. The bastard was still 10 steps ahead. But as I stood there holding my phone, something shifted inside me. The same rage that had carried me through 2 years of therapy, through rebuilding my life from scratch, through learning to trust again, it crystallized into perfect, cold clarity. Marcus thought he'd won by going nuclear. By dragging my most private pain into public view, he believed he'd backed me into a corner where I'd either crumble or look petty for fighting back. He'd forgotten that trauma can forge steel just as easily as it can break spirits. You're right, Marcus, I said, my voice steady now. I did have an abortion. And you know what? You were relieved. I pulled out my phone and held it up so the entire congregation could see. Should I play the voicemail you left me the night before? The one where you said, and I quote, "Thank God you're handling this. I'm nowhere near ready to be tied down with a kid right now." Marcus's confident smirk faltered for the first time. Or maybe, I continued, swiping through my saved messages, we should discuss the text you sent me afterward. The one where you said dealing with the pregnancy was dodging a bullet and that we could get back to having fun now. Sarah, you're taking those out of context, Marcus started, but I was just getting warmed up. Out of context? I laughed, and it sounded sharp enough to cut glass. Like how you're taking our relationship out of context? Should I tell everyone why we really broke up, Marcus? The color was starting to drain from his face. He'd expected me to be defensive, ashamed, scrambling to justify myself. He hadn't expected me to go on the offensive. You want to talk about secrets and lies? I turned to address the congregation directly. Let me tell you about the real Marcus Evans. The one who was sleeping with his coworker Jessica Morrison for 6 months before I found out. That's not, Marcus began, but I steamrolled right over him. The one who convinced me I was imagining things when I questioned why he was working late every night. Who told me I was insecure and paranoid and needed therapy for my trust issues. I could see some guests pulling out their own phones now, recording everything. Good. Let this be documented. Let the truth live forever online instead of just Marcus's lies. Jessica Morrison, I repeated loudly. That's the woman he left me for. The same Jessica Morrison who, according to his Facebook page last month, just got engaged to her longtime boyfriend. Apparently Marcus wasn't as irreplaceable as he thought. A few people actually snickered. Marcus's face was turning red now, his composure cracking. Sarah, stop, he said, and for the first time, his voice held a note of genuine panic. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm embarrassing myself? I held up my phone again. I have 47 text messages where you begged me not to tell Jessica's boyfriend about the affair. I have photos you sent from her apartment. I have. Enough. Marcus snapped, and there it was, the real Marcus underneath the charming facade. The one who screamed at me when his manipulation didn't work. The one who punched holes in walls and threw things when he couldn't control the narrative. Several guests gasped at his sudden aggression. David stepped forward protectively, and I could see my dad and uncles rising from their seats. Marcus realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. The mask had slipped in front of 200 witnesses. This is exactly what I'm talking about, I said calmly. This anger when he doesn't get his way. This need to control everyone around him. David has never once raised his voice at me. Not once. But Marcus? Marcus screamed at me regularly. The congregation was completely silent now, hanging on every word. I had them. And Marcus knew it. You want to know what kind of person Marcus really is? I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. Let me read you the voicemail he left me at 3 a.m. last Tuesday. Marcus went completely white. Sarah, don't. But I was already hitting play on the audio message, my phone speaker echoing through the chapel's acoustics. Marcus's slurred, angry voice filled the sacred space. Sarah, you think you're so much better than me now with your perfect little fiancé and your perfect little life. But I know the real you. I know how fucked up you really are inside. David's gonna figure it out eventually, and when he does, don't come crying to me. You're damaged goods, baby. Always have been. The silence that followed was deafening. Several of David's elderly relatives looked genuinely shocked. My teenage cousins were staring at Marcus like he was a creature from a horror movie. That was one of 17 voicemails he's left me since our engagement announcement went on Facebook, I said matter-of-factly. Would you like to hear the others? Some get much more creative with their language. I was drunk, Marcus protested weakly. People say things they don't mean when they're drunk? I scrolled through my phone. What about this text from last Thursday at 2 p.m.? Saw your wedding announcement in the paper. Hope David knows what a lying whore he's marrying. My mother audibly gasped. Pastor Williams looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Or this one from 3 weeks ago, you can block me on everything but I'll always find a way to remind you what you really are. David's jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. Sarah, why didn't you tell me he was harassing you? Before I could answer, Marcus played another desperate card. Because she's been responding to them. Show them your replies, Sarah. Show them how you've been leading me on. My heart sank. There were replies. Not the kind Marcus was implying, but responses nonetheless. Me asking him to stop contacting me. Me threatening to get a restraining order. But taken out of context, the fact that I'd been engaging at all could look suspicious. Go ahead, Marcus pressed, sensing weakness. Show them the messages where you tell me you still think about our relationship. Where you admit things aren't perfect with David. The congregation was looking between us like spectators at a tennis match. I could see doubt creeping back into some faces. Why had I been texting my ex at all if I was truly over him? I have screenshots of everything, Sarah. Should I post them right now? Let everyone see the whole conversation? My stomach dropped. Marcus had always been good at collecting ammunition, at twisting situations to his advantage. What if he really did have something that made me look bad? What if my attempts to get him to leave me alone could be spun as encouragement? Marcus, you need to leave immediately, David said firmly. Security is already on their way. Security? Marcus laughed. For telling the truth? Sarah's the one airing our private business. I'm just defending myself. He was regaining his confidence now, feeding off the uncertainty he created. Classic Marcus, when one manipulation tactic failed, immediately pivot to another. You know what, forget the messages, Marcus said, pulling out his own phone. Let's talk about last month. The wedding dress shopping. My blood turned to ice. He couldn't possibly know about that. Sarah came to see me afterward. Didn't you, sweetheart? Confused about whether you were making the right choice. Having second thoughts about settling for someone who doesn't really know you. That's not what happened, I said quickly, but I could feel the momentum shifting again. Because I had seen Marcus last month. Not intentionally, we'd run into each other outside the bridal shop. And yes, I'd been emotional about wedding planning stress. Marcus smiled triumphantly. He knew he'd scored a hit. Tell them, Sarah. Tell them how you cried in the parking lot. Tell them what you said about feeling trapped. The chapel erupted in whispers. David's face went through several emotions at once, confusion, hurt, anger. Marcus wasn't just exposing my past anymore. He was systematically destroying my present. I was crying because I saw you, I said, my voice cutting through the whispers. I was crying because running into my abusive ex-boyfriend outside my bridal shop brought back 2 years of trauma therapy. I turned to face David, my heart breaking at the confusion in his eyes. I called Dr. Martinez that afternoon, remember? I told you I had an emergency session with my therapist. I just didn't tell you why. David's expression softened slightly. He did remember, I'd been quiet that evening, and he'd helped me while I worked through whatever was bothering me without pressuring me to explain. But Marcus wasn't done. That's not all you told me in that parking lot, though, is it, Sarah? What about? What about the part where I told you that seeing you made me realize how lucky I was to be marrying David? I interrupted. The part where I said I'd never felt more grateful for a healthy relationship? Should I tell everyone how you followed me to my car even after I said I had nothing to say to you? Marcus's jaw tightened. You're twisting everything again. Am I? I held up my phone. Because I had the entire conversation recorded. You see, after months of harassment, I started recording our interactions. For legal purposes. The lie came out so smoothly I almost believed it myself. I didn't actually have that day recorded, but Marcus didn't know that. And the doubt that flickered across his face told me my bluff was working. You want everyone to hear how you cornered me in a parking lot and wouldn't let me leave until I explained why I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me? I continued. How you accused me of marrying David for his money. How you said I was playing house because I was too scared to be alone. Several guests were now looking at Marcus with obvious disgust. My Aunt Linda was recording everything on her phone with the dedication of a court stenographer. But Marcus recovered quickly. He always did. If you have it recorded, then play it. Let everyone hear the whole truth. My heart raced. I'd overplayed my hand, and now he was calling my bluff. But before I could respond, Jessica, my maid of honor, not his ex-mistress, stepped forward. Actually, I have something to add, she announced, pulling out her own phone. Sarah, remember when you asked me to help you document Marcus's behavior? For the restraining order paperwork? I could have kissed her. Jessica was following my lead, backing up my story even though we'd never discussed any recordings. I've been taking screenshots of every message, every social media interaction, every time he's shown up at your work or your apartment, Jessica continued. Including last month's parking lot incident, which 3 witnesses reported to mall security. Marcus's face went pale. There were no witnesses. Actually, there were, Jessica smiled. Including the security guard who had to ask you to leave Sarah alone. His report is quite detailed. The beauty of Jessica's lie was that it was probably true. Mall security cameras would have caught everything, and if there really had been a scene, someone would have intervened. Marcus was starting to realize he might have walked into a more prepared battle than he'd expected. Pastor Williams finally stepped forward. Perhaps we should postpone this ceremony until... No, I said firmly. We're not postponing anything. Marcus, you've said your piece. Now it's time for you to leave. This isn't over, Sarah, Marcus said, his mask slipping again. You can't rewrite history. People will figure out who you really are. They already know who I am, I replied. The question is whether they'll figure out who you are before you hurt someone else. As if summoned by my words, 2 security guards finally appeared at the chapel doors. Marcus looked around the room one last time, seeing nothing but hostile faces staring back at him. The security guards approached, but Marcus held up his hands with that infuriating smirk still plastered on his face. Actually, I'm not done yet. There's one more thing everyone should know. My stomach dropped. What else could he possibly have? Sarah's pregnant right now. The words hit the chapel like a bomb. Complete silence, then an explosion of gasps and whispers. I felt David's hand tighten around mine as every eye in the room fixed on my allegedly pregnant form. That's why the rush to get married, Marcus continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy. She's repeating the same pattern, but this time she found someone gullible enough to go through with it. I'm not pregnant, I said firmly, but I could see the damage was already done. David's grandmother was clutching her chest dramatically. My conservative relatives were exchanging meaningful looks. Really? Marcus pulled out his phone again. Because according to your medical insurance claims, which I still have access to because you never removed me as an emergency contact, you had a pregnancy test done 3 weeks ago. My blood ran cold. I had gone to the doctor 3 weeks ago, but not for pregnancy. I'd been having irregular periods from wedding stress, and my doctor had run a routine test just to rule it out before prescribing medication. The test was negative, but Marcus wouldn't mention that part. You were on my insurance for 2 years, I said, my voice shaking slightly. You don't have access to anything anymore. But even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure. The insurance situation after our breakup had been complicated, and Marcus worked in IT. If anyone could hack into systems or exploit forgotten access, it would be him. Would you like me to read the test results? Marcus asked, waving his phone. Or better yet, should I call Dr. Peterson's office right now? I'm sure they'd be happy to clarify for everyone. David stepped forward, his face dark with anger. Even if that were true, which it's not, what kind of sick person accesses someone's private medical records? The kind who's trying to protect people from a pathological liar, Marcus shot back. How many secrets is she going to keep from you, David? First the abortion, then the continued contact between us, now this. What's next? The congregation was buzzing with whispers now. I could hear fragments, pregnant, rushed wedding, explaining a lot. My teenage cousins looked scandalized. David's Catholic relatives appeared to be having collective heart attacks. I am not pregnant, I repeated, louder this time. And even if I were, that would be between my husband and me. Husband? Marcus laughed cruelly. You're not married yet, sweetheart. And at this rate, you might not be. I looked at David, searching his face for any sign of doubt. He was angry, but was he angry at Marcus or starting to question me? The seeds of suspicion Marcus had planted were taking root. I could see it in the way David's jaw was clenched, the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. David, I whispered, you know this isn't true. You know me. I thought I did, he said quietly, and my heart shattered. But you never told me about the harassment, about running into him last month, about the medical appointment. Marcus heard the uncertainty in David's voice and pounced like a predator sensing wounded prey. That's all I wanted, man, for you to see who she really is before you make the biggest mistake of your life. I'm actually trying to help you here. The manipulation was masterful. Marcus was positioning himself as David's ally, the concerned friend trying to save him from a deceptive woman. And it was working. Jessica grabbed my arm. Sarah, show them the negative test results. Clear this up right now. But Marcus heard her and smiled triumphantly. Negative test results can be faked. Medical documents can be altered. Sarah's very resourceful when she wants to hide something. I stared at Marcus in disbelief. He was now suggesting I'd forged medical documents, turning my own defense into evidence of deeper deception. The man's capacity for manipulation truly knew no bounds. You think I faked pregnancy test results? I asked, my voice rising. Who does that? Someone desperate to control the narrative, Marcus replied smoothly. Someone who's built an entire relationship on lies and needs to keep covering them up. I could see David processing this, his engineering mind trying to work through the logic. If I'd lied about other things, if I'd kept secrets, then maybe I was capable of more deception than he'd realized. Marcus was playing on every insecurity, every doubt that might exist in any relationship. This is insane, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. David, you were with me when I got my period 2 weeks ago. You know I'm not pregnant. Marcus's eyebrows shot up with predatory interest. Oh, really? Because bleeding during early pregnancy is actually pretty common. Didn't your previous experience teach you that? The bastard had done his research. He was taking my medical history, my body, my most private moments, and weaponizing all of it against me. Even my periods weren't safe from his manipulation. Marcus, stop, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. The constant barrage of accusations was wearing him down, making him question everything he thought he knew about me. I'm just trying to help you see the pattern, Marcus continued, his tone becoming almost gentle, like a concerned friend delivering difficult news. The secrecy, the coincidental timing of your engagement right after her chance encounter with me, the rushed wedding planning. Sarah's very good at creating situations where people feel obligated to stand by her. I felt like I was drowning. Every defense I offered was being twisted into evidence of guilt. Every truth was being reframed as a lie. This was exactly what Marcus had done during our relationship, this systematic erosion of reality until I couldn't trust my own perceptions. You know what the really sad part is? Marcus addressed David directly now, man to man. She probably does care about you. But Sarah's so damaged from her childhood, so desperate to be saved, that she'll manipulate anyone who shows her kindness. It's not entirely her fault, her father was never around, her mother was emotionally distant. Sarah learned early that crisis creates connection. My mother made a wounded sound from the front pew. Now he was attacking my family, bringing my parents into this nightmare. I could see my dad starting to rise from his seat, his face red with rage. Don't you dare bring my family into this, I warned, but Marcus just shrugged. I'm just providing context. David deserves to understand the psychology behind the behavior patterns. Sarah doesn't know how to have a healthy relationship, she only knows how to create drama and then position herself as either the victim or the savior. The worst part was that some of what he was saying contained tiny grains of truth twisted beyond recognition. I had struggled with trust issues after our relationship. I had been in therapy. I did have a complicated relationship with my parents. Marcus was taking my vulnerabilities, things I'd shared with him in intimate moments, and using them as weapons. She'll get pregnant eventually, Marcus continued conversationally, probably within the first year of marriage. Not because she necessarily wants kids right now, but because pregnancy creates obligation. Makes it harder for partners to leave when they start seeing the red flags. Stop, David said, but he looked shell-shocked. The man who'd proposed to me 6 months ago with tears of joy in his eyes now looked like he was questioning everything about our entire relationship. Marcus checked his phone casually. Actually, I should probably head out. I just wanted to make sure David knew what he was signing up for. Whether you go through with this or not is between you two. The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. He was leaving now, after dropping his bombs, letting the destruction he'd caused finish the job for him. As Marcus turned to leave with that satisfied smirk on his face, something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped back into place. Like a bone setting itself after being twisted for too long. You're not walking away from this, I said, my voice carrying across the silent chapel. Not this time. Marcus paused at the chapel doors, that predatory smile still playing at his lips. Sarah, you've embarrassed yourself enough for one day. Just let it go. Let it go? I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut crystal. Like I let it go when you convinced our entire friend group I was unstable? Like I let it go when you made me question my own sanity for 6 months? Like I let it go when you cost me my job at Morrison & Associates because you couldn't handle that I was succeeding without you? David's head snapped toward me. He cost you your job? You said you left because of workplace politics. Marcus's confident stride faltered slightly, but he kept walking. He didn't want to be here for this part, the part where his carefully constructed lies started unraveling. Oh, David doesn't know about that either? I called after Marcus. Should I tell him how you called my boss and expressed concern about my mental health? How you suggested I might be unstable enough to affect client relationships? Marcus stopped walking. The chapel was dead silent except for the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. My father was recording everything on his phone now, his journalist instincts kicking in. You want to talk about patterns, Marcus? Let's talk about your pattern of sabotaging every good thing in my life when you couldn't control it anymore. I turned to address the congregation directly. Marcus didn't just cheat on me and gaslight me during our relationship. After I had the strength to leave him, he systematically destroyed my reputation at work, poisoned my friendships, and has spent 2 years trying to convince everyone, including me, that I was the problem. Jessica was nodding vigorously, backing me up. I watched him do it, David. Sarah lost half her friend group because Marcus would show up at social events and play the wounded ex so convincingly that people felt sorry for him. That's not, Marcus started, but I steamrolled right over him. Remember Jennifer Park? My college roommate who stopped talking to me after our breakup. I pulled up my phone again. I finally found out why last month. Marcus told her I'd been cheating on him with multiple people and that I'd asked him to lie about it to save my reputation. The murmurs in the chapel were shifting now, less uncertain whispers and more sounds of outrage. My cousin Rachel was shaking her head in disgust. Or my promotion at the marketing firm? I continued, my voice getting stronger. The one I lost right after Marcus and I broke up? Turns out someone called my supervisor claiming to be a concerned friend who thought I might be having a breakdown. They suggested my recent behavioral changes might affect my judgment on client accounts. David's expression was transforming from confusion to fury. He called your boss? Anonymous tip, I said bitterly. But the caller knew details about our breakup that only Marcus would know. Specific enough to be credible, vague enough to be untraceable. Marcus's face was flushing red. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? I smiled grimly. Jennifer felt guilty about cutting me off and finally told me the whole story last month. She saved the Facebook messages you sent her, Marcus. All of them. Including the ones where you asked her to keep an eye on me because you were worried about my mental state. The security guards were still standing by the doors, but they looked uncertain about whether to intervene. This had moved beyond simple disruption into something more complex. And my boss at Morrison & Associates? He felt terrible when he realized he'd been manipulated. Apparently concerned friends calling about employees' mental health is more common than you'd think. He's actually prepared to testify about the call if I ever want to pursue legal action. Marcus's confident demeanor was cracking. This is all coincidence and speculation. Is it? I held up my phone. Because I spent the last 6 months documenting everything once I realized what you'd been doing. Jennifer wasn't the only friend you contacted. You reached out to at least 7 people in our social circle, didn't you? The chapel fell silent again as everyone waited for Marcus's response. Looking at Marcus's increasingly panicked face, I could see him calculating his next move. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. 7 people, Marcus, I repeated, my voice echoing through the chapel. Should I name them all? Starting with my friend Lisa from yoga class, who you told I'd been acting erratic and making concerning statements about relationships? Marcus's phone was buzzing in his hand. He glanced at it and his face went ashen. Oh, that's probably Lisa now, I said conversationally. See, I told her about today's little performance last week. Asked her to watch the live stream my cousin is posting to Facebook. I wanted her to see the unstable version of me you've been describing compared to the woman actually standing here defending herself. David pulled out his own phone, his face a mask of fury. Rachel, are you streaming this? My teenage cousin nodded enthusiastically. Instagram Live, Facebook, and TikTok. We're up to like 3,000 viewers. Marcus looked like he might throw up. Sarah, tell them to stop recording. Why? I tilted my head innocently. I thought you wanted everyone to know the truth. Well, here's the truth. Marcus Evans systematically stalked and harassed me for 2 years because he couldn't handle that I was building a better life without him. My phone buzzed with notifications. Then David's. Then Jessica's. The social media posts were spreading, and people were starting to comment. Your ex-coworker Jennifer Morrison is watching too, I announced, scanning the live comments. You know, the woman you cheated on me with? She says hi. She also wants everyone to know that you did the same thing to the woman you dated after her. Apparently there's a whole group chat of your exes comparing notes now. The blood drained from Marcus's face completely. That's not. Jennifer wouldn't. But I could see from his expression that Jennifer absolutely would. The hunter was becoming the hunted, and Marcus was realizing his past victims weren't staying silent anymore. Oh, this is interesting, Jessica chimed in, reading over my shoulder. Someone named Amanda says she works at Morrison & Associates and has been wondering who made that anonymous call about Sarah. She's asking if she should forward Marcus's number to HR since they have policies about harassment affecting their employees. David stepped forward, his jaw clenched. You son of a bitch. You cost her job? I was trying to help her. Marcus exploded, his carefully maintained facade finally cracking completely. Sarah was spiraling after our breakup. She needed intervention, not enablement. The raw anger in his voice silenced the chapel. This was the real Marcus, the one who screamed when his manipulation failed, who punished anyone who dared to reject him. There it is, I said quietly. The real Marcus Evans. The one who decides what's best for everyone else. The one who destroys lives when he doesn't get his way. Pastor Williams finally found his voice. Sir, you need to leave. Now. But Marcus wasn't done imploding. His phone kept buzzing with what I assumed were increasingly panicked messages from people who'd been watching the live stream. You want to destroy me? Marcus snarled at me. Fine. But everyone's going to know exactly what kind of person you really are. Every mistake, every weakness, every pathetic moment from our relationship, it's all going online tonight. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. David moved protectively in front of me, but I could see the worry in his eyes. What else might Marcus expose? What other private moments might he weaponize? You think I'm afraid of you anymore? I asked, stepping around David to face Marcus directly. You already played your worst cards. You brought up the most painful experience of my life, attacked my family, tried to sabotage my marriage, what's left? Marcus's smile turned genuinely vicious. Oh, sweetheart. We're just getting started. Marcus pulled out his phone with trembling hands, his facade of control completely shattered. You want to play this game? Fine. Let's see how David feels about the real Sarah Chin. My blood turned to ice as he started scrolling through what looked like a massive folder of screenshots. 2 years. He'd been collecting ammunition for 2 years. Marcus, whatever you think you have, I started, but he cut me off with a laugh that made my skin crawl. Think I have? Sarah, I have everything. Every vulnerability you shared, every moment of weakness, every single thing you confided in me during 3 years together. His eyes were wild now, desperate. You want to humiliate me? Let's talk about your eating disorder. The words hit me like a physical blow. Around me, I heard David's sharp intake of breath, my mother's horrified gasp. The chapel fell into a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. That's right, Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength as he saw my reaction. Saint Sarah, who's got it all together now, spent 6 months of our relationship obsessively counting calories and throwing up after meals. Should I tell everyone about finding you passed out on the bathroom floor? About the nights you cried because you thought you were fat? I felt like the walls were closing in. This wasn't just exposure, this was psychological warfare. Marcus was taking the darkest period of my life, something I'd worked through in therapy, and using it to destroy me in front of everyone I loved. I was struggling, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. You said you understood. You said you'd never. Never what? Never tell the truth about how unstable you were? Marcus was gaining momentum now, feeding off my visible distress. David, did you know your fiancée used to weigh herself 3 times a day? That she'd have complete breakdowns if the number went up even half a pound? David's face was a mask of protective fury, but I could see the shock there too. Another piece of my past I'd never fully shared with him. Not because I was hiding it, but because it was painful and I'd moved beyond it. She'd make me hide the scale, Marcus continued relentlessly. Then she'd sneak into the bathroom at 2 a.m. to check her weight. The obsession consumed everything, our dates, our conversations, our entire relationship revolved around Sarah's latest crisis. Stop, David said firmly, but Marcus was on a roll now. Oh, and the spending. Marcus pulled up what looked like old bank statements on his phone. Sarah's got a little problem with retail therapy when she's stressed. David, you might want to check your credit cards. She racked up $12,000 in debt during our relationship and then tried to guilt me into paying it off. My heart sank. The debt was real. I'd struggled financially during a period when my freelance work dried up, and yes, I'd made some poor spending decisions when anxiety got the better of me. But Marcus was twisting it, making it sound calculated and manipulative. That debt was from when I lost 3 clients in 1 month, I said, my voice shaking. You know that. And I never asked you to pay it off, you offered, then held it over my head for months. Sure I did, Marcus smirked. Just like I held over your head all the times I drove you to therapy, all the nights I talked you down from panic attacks, all the times I covered for you when you couldn't handle basic adult responsibilities. The congregation was shifting uncomfortably. I could see doubt creeping back into faces that had just been sympathetic. Marcus was painting a picture of me as fundamentally unstable, making himself look like a long-suffering partner who tried to save me from myself. You're rewriting history again, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Because mixed in with his lies were threads of truth that made everything more devastating. Am I? Marcus held up his phone. I documented everything, Sarah. Every breakdown, every crisis, every time you threatened to leave me and then begged me to fight for you when I didn't chase after you. My stomach dropped. He really did have everything. The worst part was that Marcus wasn't entirely lying. I had struggled with an eating disorder during a particularly stressful period of our relationship. I had accumulated debt. I had been in therapy. But he was taking my lowest moments, times when I trusted him enough to be vulnerable, and weaponizing them against me. You documented my mental health struggles? I asked, and something in my voice made several guests lean forward. You were keeping files on my therapy sessions? My private breakdowns? Marcus seemed to realize he'd revealed something he shouldn't have. I was concerned about you. I wanted to track your patterns so I could help. Help? My voice was getting louder now. You were building a case file against me while pretending to be supportive? David's expression had shifted from shock to something much darker. You were spying on her mental health treatment? It wasn't spying, Marcus backpedaled. Sarah would tell me about her sessions. I just took notes. To better understand how to support her. You took notes, I repeated slowly. On my therapy. The congregation was murmuring now, but the tone had shifted. What had initially sounded like legitimate concerns about my stability was starting to sound more sinister. Jessica pulled out her own phone. Actually, Marcus, since we're sharing old documentation, maybe I should post the screenshots Sarah sent me during your relationship. You know, the ones where she asked me if it was normal for boyfriends to track their girlfriends' moods in spreadsheets? Marcus went pale. That's taken out of context. Is it? I pulled up my own photos, my hands surprisingly steady now. Should I show everyone the mood tracking chart you made me fill out daily? The one where I had to rate my anxiety, my eating patterns, my emotional stability on a scale of 1 to 10? David stared at me. He made you track your emotions numerically? Every day for 4 months, I confirmed. He said it was to help me understand my patterns. But really it was so he could point to the data whenever he wanted to prove I was too emotional or not thinking clearly. The chapel was completely silent now. Even Marcus seemed to realize that his evidence of my instability was looking more like evidence of his controlling behavior. You were struggling, Marcus said weakly. I was trying to help you get better. By documenting everything I said in confidence so you could use it against me later? I held up my phone, showing a screenshot of what looked like a detailed journal entry. David, would you like to see Marcus's notes about our intimate conversations? Including his analysis of what my emotional outbursts meant and how he could manage them. Marcus lunged forward slightly, panic in his eyes. Sarah, don't. Don't what? Don't show everyone how you treated my mental health like a science project? How you turned my vulnerability into your control mechanism? My mother stood up in the front pew, her face flushed with anger I'd rarely seen. You manipulated my daughter when she was at her most vulnerable? Mrs. Chen, you don't understand, Marcus started, but my father cut him off. Oh, I understand perfectly, Dad said, his journalist instincts sharp as ever. You're a predator. You target people when they're struggling and then document their pain to use against them later. The live stream comments were exploding now. I could see David scrolling through them, his face growing darker with each message. Your ex Jennifer just posted something interesting, David announced. Apparently you kept similar documentation on her anxiety issues and used it during their breakup to convince her family she needed professional help. Marcus's phone was buzzing constantly now. His past was catching up with him in real time, broadcast to thousands of people who were connecting the dots he tried to keep separate. This is harassment, Marcus said desperately. You're ruining my life over something that happened years ago. Something that's still happening, I corrected. Your voicemails to me last week. Your appearance here today. Your threats to expose my private information. When exactly did this behavior stop, Marcus? The security guards were approaching again, but Marcus held up his hands. Fine, he said, his voice shaking with rage. But this conversation isn't over, Sarah. Not by a long shot. But before Marcus could take another step toward the door, my phone rang. The sound echoed through the chapel speakers. I'd forgotten it was still connected to the sound system from when I'd played his voicemail. The caller ID made my blood freeze. Dr. Martinez, therapist. My hands trembled as I realized what this meant. Dr. Martinez only called during emergencies or if there was a serious concern about patient safety. And she was calling me during my wedding ceremony. Marcus saw the caller ID too, and his face lit up with malicious glee. Oh, this is perfect. Your therapist is calling during your wedding? That doesn't sound like someone who's mentally stable, does it? The congregation murmured as everyone processed this newest development. David's family looked increasingly concerned. Even my own relatives seemed unsure what to make of a bride whose therapist was calling during her ceremony. Answer it, Marcus taunted. Let everyone hear what Dr. Martinez has to say about your current mental state. My finger hovered over the decline button, but I knew that would look even worse. If I refused to take the call, Marcus would spin it as proof that I was hiding something serious. If I answered, whatever Dr. Martinez needed to discuss would become public knowledge. Sarah, David whispered urgently, you don't have to. But I was already sliding to answer. Dr. Martinez? Her voice filled the chapel through the sound system, professional but clearly concerned. Sarah, I'm so sorry to interrupt your wedding, but I received some very disturbing information this morning that I felt couldn't wait. My heart hammered against my ribs. What could be so urgent that my therapist would break protocol to call during my ceremony? Someone contacted my office claiming to be a concerned family member, Dr. Martinez continued, unaware that her words were being broadcast to 200 guests. They provided detailed information about your personal history and suggested you might be in crisis. Sarah, did you ask someone to contact me about your current mental state? The chapel erupted in whispers. Marcus's grin was triumphant. Somehow he'd managed to manipulate the situation so that even my own therapist was publicly questioning my stability. No, Dr. Martinez. I didn't ask anyone to contact you, I managed. The caller knew very specific details about your treatment history, she pressed on, clearly puzzled. Information that should only be known by you or someone very close to you. They expressed concern that you might be having an episode and making impulsive decisions. Given the timing of this call on your wedding day, I felt I should check in. Marcus was practically glowing with satisfaction. He found a way to turn even my mental health support system against me, making my own therapist question my judgment in front of everyone I loved. Dr. Martinez, I said, my voice shaking, someone has been harassing me and accessing my private information without permission. But even as I said it, I could see how this looked to the congregation. A bride whose ex crashes her wedding, whose therapist calls during the ceremony expressing concern about her mental state, whose private struggles are being aired in public. It painted exactly the picture Marcus wanted, that I was unstable and making poor decisions. Sarah, perhaps we should schedule an emergency session, Dr. Martinez suggested, her professional concern evident. This situation sounds quite complex and potentially triggering for your recovery. David's jaw was clenched so tightly I thought he might crack a tooth. His family looked like they were witnessing a complete breakdown in real time. Marcus stepped forward with fake sympathy. Doctor, maybe you should know that Sarah's been under enormous stress lately. Wedding planning, keeping secrets from her fiancé, dealing with the pressure of maintaining her new image. And just like that, Marcus had turned my own therapist into another weapon against me. Dr. Martinez, I said firmly, cutting Marcus off before he could poison my therapist against me too. The person who called you was Marcus Evans, my ex-boyfriend. He's the one standing in my wedding chapel right now after crashing my ceremony uninvited. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear Dr. Martinez processing this information through the phone. Sarah, her voice became sharper, more clinical. Are you telling me that someone has been impersonating a family member to access information about your treatment? Marcus's triumphant expression faltered. I never claimed to be family. Actually, you did, Dr. Martinez interrupted, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. The caller specifically identified himself as Sarah's brother and said the family was concerned about her upcoming wedding being a manic episode. My actual brother Kevin stood up from the fourth pew, his face twisted with disgust. I'm Sarah's brother, and I never called anyone. What kind of sick freak impersonates family members to therapists? The congregation's murmur shifted from confusion to outrage. Several people were now staring at Marcus like he was something they'd scrape off their shoe. Dr. Martinez, I continued, my voice growing stronger, Marcus has been systematically trying to convince people I'm unstable for 2 years. This is just his latest attempt. I see, Dr. Martinez said, and her tone had turned ice-cold professional. Mr. Evans, if you are indeed present and listening to this conversation, you should know that impersonating family members to access confidential patient information is not only unethical, it's illegal. Marcus's face was turning red. I was concerned about her well-being. Concerned individuals don't lie to mental health professionals or crash weddings, Dr. Martinez cut him off. They also don't weaponize someone's therapy history against them. Sarah, from everything I'm hearing, this situation is exactly the kind of harassment we've been working to help you overcome. The validation hit me like a warm wave. My own therapist, who knew my complete history, who'd helped me rebuild my sense of reality after Marcus's gaslighting, was publicly confirming what I'd been trying to tell everyone. Marcus has been stalking and harassing Sarah for 2 years, Jessica added, holding up her phone. Dr. Martinez, I've been documenting everything as Sarah's support person. Would screenshots of his messages be helpful for your records? They would be extremely helpful, Dr. Martinez replied crisply. And Mr. Evans, you should know that attempting to manipulate someone's mental health treatment is considered psychological abuse. I'll be reporting this incident to the appropriate authorities. Marcus looked like a trapped animal. His master plan was backfiring spectacularly. Instead of my therapist questioning my judgment, she was professionally diagnosing his behavior as abusive. This is all being taken out of context, he said desperately. Sarah has a history of surviving an abusive relationship with someone who documented her vulnerabilities to use against her later. Dr. Martinez's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Yes, we've covered that extensively in our sessions. Along with the systematic harassment that followed. David stepped closer to me, his expression shifting from confusion back to protective fury. Sarah's been in therapy specifically because of what he did to her? Among other reasons, Dr. Martinez confirmed. Recovering from psychological abuse is complex work, and Sarah has made remarkable progress. Which makes this current harassment attempt particularly concerning. The chapel erupted in angry murmurs. My Aunt Linda was recording everything with the dedication of a court stenographer, muttering things about evidence and lawsuits. Several of David's relatives were shaking their heads in disgust at Marcus. Dr. Martinez, I said, I'm okay right now. I have my support system here, and Marcus is about to be removed by security. Can we discuss this more in our regular session? Of course. And Sarah? You're handling this situation with exactly the kind of strength and clarity we've been working toward. I'm proud of you. The words filled me with warmth and confidence I'd been lacking since Marcus first walked through those doors. My own therapist was witnessing my growth in real time and validating my response. Marcus made one last desperate play. Doctor, you're only hearing one side of the story. Mr. Evans, Dr. Martinez interrupted coldly, I'm ending this call now, but our conversation is far from over. Expect to hear from my attorney regarding your fraudulent contact with my office. She hung up, leaving Marcus standing in stunned silence as the chapel buzzed with renewed energy. His final weapon had not only failed, it had exploded in his face. The security guards finally moved in, flanking Marcus on both sides. His face had gone from red to ashen as the full weight of his situation hit him. Dr. Martinez's words were still echoing through the chapel, psychological abuse, illegal impersonation, attorney contact. This isn't over, Marcus said, but his voice cracked on the words. The confident manipulator who'd strutted down my aisle 20 minutes ago was gone, replaced by a desperate man watching his carefully constructed lies crumble in real time. Actually, it is, David said, stepping forward with quiet authority. Sarah, do you want to press charges? I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. 2 years of fear, of looking over my shoulder, of second-guessing myself because of his manipulation. But standing here now, surrounded by people who truly loved me, I could see him for what he really was, pathetic. Yes, I said clearly. For harassment, for impersonating my brother to access my medical records, for stalking, and for everything else we can make stick. Marcus's last bit of bravado crumbled. Sarah, please. No, I cut him off. You wanted to destroy my life because you couldn't control it anymore. You targeted me at my most vulnerable, documented my pain to use against me, and spent 2 years trying to convince everyone I was broken. But here's what you never understood, Marcus, surviving you made me stronger. The chapel was completely silent now, everyone hanging on my words. You thought crashing my wedding would be your ultimate victory, I continued, my voice steady and clear. You thought exposing my struggles would make people see me as damaged goods. Instead, you showed everyone exactly who you are, a predator who attacks people when they're healing. Marcus tried to speak, but I wasn't finished. I am proud of my therapy. I'm proud of surviving an eating disorder. I'm proud of rebuilding my life after you tried to destroy it. Every single thing you threw at me today is proof that I'm a survivor, not a victim. The congregation broke into spontaneous applause. My mother was crying happy tears now, my father beaming with pride. David's family, who looked so concerned earlier, were clapping the loudest. Get him out of here, David said to security, putting his arm around me protectively. As the guards escorted Marcus toward the doors, he turned back one last time. But whatever cutting remark he'd planned died on his lips when he saw my face. I wasn't broken. I wasn't humiliated. I was radiant. The wedding continues, Pastor Williams announced with obvious relief, and the chapel erupted in cheers. 20 minutes later, I was kissing my husband as the congregation celebrated around us. My cousin Rachel was still streaming live, the viewers had jumped to over 10,000 people, all witnessing not my destruction, but my triumph. During our first dance, David whispered in my ear, I'm sorry I doubted you, even for a second. You didn't know the whole story, I replied, spinning in his arms. But you stood by me when it mattered. As we danced, I caught sight of my phone lighting up with notifications. Messages from old friends who'd watched the stream and finally understood what had happened to our friendships. Apologies from people who believed Marcus's lies. Job offers from people who'd witnessed my grace under fire. But the best message came from Jennifer Morrison, Marcus's ex-mistress. * Sarah, you're a hero. 3 of us are filing a joint restraining order tomorrow. He'll never hurt anyone like this again. *. I smiled and tucked my phone away. Marcus had crashed my wedding hoping to destroy me, but instead, he'd given me the greatest gift of all, the chance to show everyone, including myself, just how strong I'd become. The nightmare was finally over.